What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets Central Podcast, episode 76, where we are going to be talking about a little bit of breaking news, I guess, to start before we get into all of the bigger conversations throughout the show here. As the New York Mets made a trade acquiring Gregory Soto this afternoon. So thankfully, we got news before we went live because one of the worst things about podcasting is when news breaks after a show or just like a day after, whatever it may be. Thankfully, we ended up getting the news before we went live today. And yeah, we're going to talk about that, the series that just happened against the Angels, as well as potentially more moves that the Mets could make come the trade deadline. But before we jump into everything, I ask that you please leave a like on your way into the stream here, or if you're watching on replay, subscribe if you guys are new to the channel, especially if you're Met fans, and turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live. If you are in the live chat, we will get to your comments, questions, and everything throughout the episode. We're not ignoring you. Now, with that being said, I'm gonna repeat what I said because I'm gonna clip this for a video. The New York Mets acquired Gregory Soto from the Baltimore Orioles in exchange for Wellington Arciana. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, and Cameron Foster. So a little bit lower end prospects. I believe one of the prospects was ranked like 19th or something according to the pipeline, and I'm not sure about the other. I know people are a little upset about losing the first prospect they named in Arciana. Again, I don't know if I'm saying his name right because he could touch 100 with the fastball. But at the end of the day, you need to go in and win now. It's just that simple. And we'd be mad if they didn't make a trade like this because you got to go in to win. I am a little upset after seeing what Josh Naylor went for that the Mets weren't in on that, but I guess we don't know if, they asked for more to trade within the National League. But either way, to get Gregory Soto to add a lefty to this bullpen with Brooks Raley is huge, and it checks off a major thing on the checklist here. And to me, there was like 5 to 6 things that you need to check off, and that is you need to get 2 relievers, you need to get a starter, and in my mind, you got to get 2 bats. You addressed one of those areas now with this trade, and he's probably the lower end arm. I think they got to get now a higher end arm to pair towards the end of games with Edwin Diaz, and then give Reed Garrett and Ryan Stanek a little bit more leeway in the back end of that bullpen. But as for Gregory Soto, he's having a solid year, 3.96 ERA with a 3.29 FIP, so he is getting a little unlucky. The biggest thing that I could tell you with Gregory Soto, he has fantastic stuff. It is electric what he throws. Sometimes he just has no idea where it's going, and it causes for a lot of walk concerns as he has a 4.5 walks per 9, according to Baseball Reference here, but the strikeouts per 9, almost 11. So it's a reliever. Like that's just what it is. It's a reliever. The ERA doesn't look the greatest because one bad outing, which he did have 1 or 2 bad outings where he allowed 3 runs this year. Outside of that, I mean, he's been pretty much nails throughout the year. At worst, every now and then he'll allow a run. He's an arm. He's an arm that they desperately needed.
No, I like this trade a lot. And listen, this team desperately needed another lefty as an option because there was a long point of this season where the Mets went through this season where they really didn't have a good lefty in that bullpen, especially after AJ Minter went down. Obviously, they brought back Brooks Raley. He's been solving them so far, but enough with the Dickie Love ladies, enough with the Jose Castillos. They needed another solid lefty to attach to Brooks Raley in this bullpen. And look, would it have been nice to have both Minter and Raley in the bullpen? Yes, unfortunately, it's baseball, though. Injuries happen. But Gregory Soto, to me, it's a very good option. I mean, like you said, he's got very good stuff. I love his velo. I mean, he's 86% percentile on Baseball Savant in fastball velo, averages about 96.8%. And especially, high velo guy from a lefty, that's another good sign. The only thing, like you said, he walks a lot of guys. I mean, 11th percentile in walks on Baseball Savant. That's not the greatest. So hopefully though, under the pitching lab, hopefully under the coaching of like Jeremy Hefner and Desi Druskel, hopefully they kind of figure out. I'm not saying that they have to completely cut back on the walks, but if they could just maybe half the walk issues, I think if you add Gregory Soto now to this pen, it's going to be a nice little add, and it's a nice little addition to the bullpen. But like you said, they still need to go out and add more. I would still like to add, like you said, another high volume righty reliever. I know Clase has been talked about, Johan Duran's been talked about, Griffin Jackson's been talked about. I mean,
Felix
those are the type of
Bautista,
guys. Sorry,
Felix Bautista as
yeah,
well.
Felix, but although I think he's on the injured list now, so I don't think he's gonna get moved. At least that's what I saw. I think either a day ago or something like
I
that.
didn't even
So,
know that.
but we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, look, those guys, they're gonna have to cost a lot. I mean, because they're top end relievers. But listen, the Mets are right now, they're in a position where you have to go all in and get as many quality guys as you can, because this team, if you add those pieces and if the top guys perform, this team could be a team that is capable of winning a World Series. But a lot of factors do have to go the right way in order for that to happen. But listen, it's a good start so far. Um, I agree with what you said, Evan. They still need another starter, in my opinion. And there's a couple guys out there which I think we'll probably end up talking about. And I do think they need two bats. I don't know if they're going to end up getting those two bats. I do think that they'll end up at least getting one, and we'll probably talk about who that guy is in this podcast as well. But yeah, so far it's a good start for David Stearns.
We'll talk more about the bats in a minute, just because I have thoughts with that. But yeah, just again to add to a bullpen that has been in desperate need of someone like this for weeks now, and I just wish this trade could have happened sooner. Unfortunately, it didn't. But yeah, you do this as many times as you could for the prospects they gave up. Again, the guy that throws 100, could he be something? Sure, but you're in a position where you gave Juan Soto a record-setting deal. Push the chips in right now. The only thing that is unfortunate, just because I was looking at it, because I was curious about how he is come playoff time. Not really enough of a sample size to judge. I mean, he did pitch in 5 games for the Phillies. It was only 3 innings though of work. He pitched to a 3.26 FIP, but the ERA was at a 6. So again, I don't know what to make out for that. And then he had 2/3 of an innings with the Orioles in last year's postseason. So I don't know what to make of him as a playoff performer. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing about this ad is that it relieves so much pressure off of Brooks Raley as well, who you ideally do not want going on back-to-back days until you're later on in the season, and then you could actually talk about being in that position where, okay, now we got to use the bullets here and use Brooks Raley as much as possible. At least now, until you get to September, October, when you need those consecutive days from Raley, he has a lot more leeway with Gregory Soto back there. So overall, to kickstart the trade deadline for the Mets, good stuff, but to be determined to see what else they do.
Yeah, and look, like you mentioned with the two prospects they gave up. I mean, look, like Wellington our Arnacina, that's how you say his name. He looks like a pretty good arm. Obviously, like you said, he tops 100, and he's had a pretty good season so far in Port St. Lucie. I mean, he's pitching to a 2.38 ERA with a 1.13 WHIP and in 64.1 innings pitched. But at the end of the day, while the kid might have good stuff in the future, he's not going to contribute to this team until like 3, 4, even maybe 5 years down the line. So, like we said, the Mets right now are in a position to win. Does it suck maybe to lose these guys in the future because they could turn out to be something? Yeah, but that's the risk you take when right now, currently, this team is a World Series contender. So, listen, right now for me, I make this trade 10 times out of 10 every single day of the week. Look, maybe in a couple years, down the line, do we look at this trade? If the Mets don't win a World Series and say, ooh, maybe that wasn't such a good trade to make. Yeah, but listen, hindsight's always 2020. But right now, where we are currently in the season and where this team is currently, with the roster and how it's constructed, like I said, you have to make this move every single day of the week.
Yeah, and like we keep saying, it's one move out of many that they need to make, because they need to go out there still and acquire bats, which there were rumors as well before we started talking that apparently Starling Marte has been in trade conversations. And, in my mind, if Starling Marte truly is in trade conversations, you have to be adding 2 bats, right? Because you can't possibly tell me that you're going to get rid of Marte and add a Luis Robert. And then it's like, you know what? That's our deadline, which would Robert be an upgrade? I don't know, because you're banking on so much upside, but if the upside doesn't hit, then he's worse than Marte, which I cannot believe I'm saying. But in my mind, like you have to be adding two bats at that point, which there were rumors about this that they are in on Brent Rooker. To me, at this rate, I mean, if you could go out and acquire a Mullins or Robert for center field and then acquire a Brent Rooker, I think that's an ideal path. Like, again, I'm not in love with the whole getting Robert thing. I think that, given what this offensive hitting lab, whatever you want to call them, has shown, they haven't shown to get the best out of guys. And I don't know if that's going to be the case with Robert. So I would prefer them to go the Mullins route just to be safe and then acquire Rooker. But remains to be seen. It doesn't look like they're in on Suarez. All I know is that if you are going to subtract from Marte, you need to add more bats because, in my mind, you need to get a DH then. You need to get a center fielder. And then I would argue that they should maybe get a third bat and get a utility infielder if Ronnie Mauricio doesn't show anything within the next 6 days or so. But it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. It seems like they're probably just going to acquire a center fielder and call it a day. And I don't agree with the decision at all. But your thoughts on that overall?
I mean, look. First of all, with the Marte thing, I mean, look, Marte so far, at least these last couple weeks, even before he went on the injured list and these last couple games since he came off, he has looked good. I'm not gonna sit here and like completely shit on Marte. Like he has been at least, he's at least had a positive impact with his bat, but I still think you can make more of an improvement on Starling Marte because look, at the end of the day, he's a $20 million guy as currently positioned right now. He's a DH, even though we all know that he doesn't have the most power on this team. Like, and as a DH, you typically want a guy that's going to hit home runs, kind of like a guy like Kyle Schwarber in Philadelphia. But I mean, and the Mets did also try to trade him in the offseason. They just couldn't make the money work with other teams. But look, if the Mets are able to free themselves of a guy like Starling Marte, then absolutely they do have to get more than one bat out there. If they don't end up getting rid of Marte, I do think they only end up getting one bat unless the other type of bat's going to be a lower end utility guy, like you mentioned, as like a backup infielder guy. I mean, look, I think the number one bat that right now it seems like they're going to get, and there's been a whole lot of talk that the Mets are going to end up getting a center fielder, and the two guys like you mentioned are Mullins and Luis Robert.
And a bit of Bader.
Yeah, a bit of Bader, but I know Bader's had a pretty good season statistically, but I don't want Bader back. It's no offense to him. It's just we've seen how it worked here, especially come playoff time. Listen, the guy plays a good center field. Especially we have to ask one guy if he could play center field or not. But yeah, it's just we've seen how he is here. Especially come playoff time. I just no thank you on Harrison Bader. I do think, though, out of Robert and Cedric Mullins, I think that the guy they end up getting is Luis Robert. I just think there's way too much smoke around Robert to the Mets, so I think that's going to end up happening. I'm interested to see what the Mets have to give up in terms of prospect-wise. Hopefully, it's not too much considering, Robert for these last 2 years he's been pretty bad. Like if we're gonna be completely honest, look, is that more of just the White Sox are bad and it's kind of rubbed off on him and his playing style? Listen, that could also be the case if you bring him into a winning environment. Maybe, it kind of gets him going a little bit and you start to see more of the player that we saw out of Robert in 2021. Because, look, we know, and what we see out of him from 2021, we know that Robert could be a very good dynamic offensive and defensive type player. He has a very good glove in center field. And, when he's hitting to his full potential, he's a guy that can hit for contact. He's a guy that can hit for home run, and he has very good speeds and he has very good legs on the base pass, which is all qualities that David Stearns likes out of quote on type center fielder. So, listen, for me, it just depends on what they're gonna have to go for Robert. Because obviously, if the White Sox are asking for a lot, then I really don't have much to interest. Because and we even talked about this between Robert and Mullins. If you're looking between just those two, Mullins is definitely the more safer option if you want to go for a center fielder, but Robert is definitely the guy. He might have the lower floor, but he definitely has the higher ceiling. And if you can get the most out of Robert, then that could definitely be a good trade, through the future. Because especially, I think he still has 2 more years under team control. So, listen, we'll see what happens. I mean, the one thing I do like about Robert, or the two things I like about him, good. He's a good fielder in center field, and he does hit well against lefties, which is something that this Mets team desperately struggles with.
Yeah, it's just like here's the thing, because usually I'm the guy that will go into the sabermetrics and look at the underlying stuff and be like, okay, there is something here, but like even with Robert right now, it's so hard to argue with the people that are like, well, he's got just as bad of numbers as Tyrone Taylor. Like, I can't even argue it right now, outside of the fact that at least he's got double digit home runs and he steals bases. I think it's fine if you go and get Robert if you're getting another bat.
Yeah.
But if Robert is your only ad, that's where I have problems. You can't tell me and tell this fan base that, okay, we're getting Luis Robert and that's our offensive fix and that's all we're going to do. This team has been towards the bottom with runners in scoring position all season long. And you can't possibly, again, you just can't sell me that that's a good enough acquisition, which it will help you defensively. And sure, if he hits that upside that we're talking about here, that's awesome. But like I said before, is that going to happen with this offense? And the problem I have too with, the whole, well, he's on the White Sox thing, you would at least see him probably drawing some walks every now and then, because they would want to pitch around him if he was so great. That's not even happening though with him. So I don't know. I go back and forth on, if this is a good idea or not, because there is this part of me that is like, you look at the numbers of what he did in those 2 or 3 years, albeit a small sample size in 2 of the years, and it's like maybe you could get a good player out of this, but it's just so risky to where I don't know if this is worth it.
No, I 100% definitely agree. I mean, the other thing, because I just checked, I mean, because you brought up with the runners in scoring position. That's the other thing about Robert's game that he's at least been solid this year. And when he's hitting with men in scoring position, he has hit pretty well. It's 282 average, 398 OBP, 338 slugging, 736 OPS. I mean, look, is it like the best numbers in the league? No, but at least I mean he has better numbers. Statistically better than Juan Soto run scoring position. Like, obviously, Juan Soto is a better player than Luis Robert, but I'm just saying. But I do agree with you. If they're going to add Luis Robert, it's going to have to be with another bat. I don't think just adding Luis Robert is enough for this offense. I mean, look, we'll obviously talk about more with the because Francisco Alvarez could obviously be another big weapon if he actually is utilized right. He could be another big piece of this lineup, and again, we'll talk about that more as we move on with the podcast. But I definitely do agree that if they're going to add the Robert, I'm cool with it, but you're going to have to add another bat as well, because just adding Robert, it's not enough for me.
Just some breaking news that we got here. The Yankees acquired Ryan McMahon just now from the Rockies for 2 prospects. So it looks like they're going to be out on Suarez. And if more teams get out of the mix for Suarez, I would like for the Mets to jump in, but I feel like he's going to be a Mariner at this rate.
Yeah, that's what I said. I saw the rumor yesterday that the Mariners are also hot on him, and I mean that will be 2 great additions for the Mariners, both getting Naylor and Suarez.
Yeah, get both those Diamondbacks guys. So, yeah, just thought I would drop that there. So, and then back to the whole thing with Robert. The other thing that, if I'm gonna pick a positive as well, is that he's had a good July. Like July, he has put up really elite numbers, to be completely honest with you. And is this to boost the trade value? I don't know, but either way, we'll see about that. We do have a series to talk about though here as well. We'll talk more about the Gregory Soto trade on Mets Weekly's show very soon. We're gonna go live with them right after we do our live stream here, so be on the lookout for that. But there is a series to talk about. As the Mets swept the Angels, and we'll jump right into the game by game recap, just because this was a little bit of a low event series, to be honest with you, outside of, I would say, maybe like the first game. But yeah, game 1, you had Kodai Senga versus Tyler Anderson. In the top of the second inning, Logan O'Hoppe would hit a solo shot to make it 1-0 for the Angels. In the top of the third, Rengifo hit a single, Trout walks, Taylor Ward hits a double to make it 3-0. Joe Adell hits a single to make it 4-0, and Moncada walks. it looked like the Mets had no chance of winning this baseball game at all. But then things took a change as in the bottom of the fourth, McNeil walks with 2 outs. Beatty hits a 2-run home run to make it a 4-2 ball game. In the seventh inning, though, the Angels would end up expanding on their lead a little bit as Neto hits a single, gets caught stealing. Shanuel walks. Trout gets hit by a pitch. Ward hits a single to make it a 5-2 game. So Taylor Ward maybe showcasing a little bit of himself for a trade deadline ad, maybe for the Mets, maybe for a different team. But in the bottom of the seventh inning, Alvarez walks, Acuna hits a single, Nimmo gets hit by a pitch, Lindor hits into a force out, which made it 5-3. Soto with a big single to tie the game up at 5. And then in the bottom of the eighth inning, Beatty walks, Alvarez hits a double, Mauricio gets a little help from a fielder's choice, and that brought on a run to make it 6-5. And Nimmo with a sac fly makes it 7-5. That would be your final score in game number 1. In game number 2, ignore the fact that I forgot to edit the text for the game number. But either way, in the top of the first inning, Shanuel hits a double, Trout hits a single, and then Shanuel gets thrown out at the plate by Juan Soto. In the top of the second, Soler hits a solo shot to make it 1-0. In the top of the fifth, Rengifo hits a double because for whatever reason, Luis Rengifo cost fits for this Mets team the entire week. But Neto walks, Shanuel hits a double to make it 2-0. In the bottom of the fifth, Beatty hits a double. Alvarez with a 2-run home run to tie the game up at 2, showcasing a little bit of what we saw from the highlights down in Syracuse. And then Mauricio hits a single, steals a bag. Nimmo hits a single to bring him in to make it 3-2. So the Mets score all their runs in one inning naturally. In game number 3, Sean Manaea versus Burke. In the bottom of the first, Nimmo hits a leadoff home run to make it a 1-0 game. In the top of the second, Ward hits a single. Adele walks. Rengifo walks, but Manaea works out of the bases loaded jam. In the third inning, Trout hits a solo shot. Still do not know to this moment how he got a hold of that pitch with how far it was out of the zone. But either way, he tied the game up at 1 there. In the bottom of the third, Taylor walks. Nimmo gets hit by a pitch. Lindor hits a single to make it 2-1. And then Alonso hits a home run to make it 5-1. So it was good to see those two get out of their slumps a little bit. We got to, of course, see them build on it. In the bottom of the fourth inning, Vientos hits a double, gets tagged out from poor base running on a Luis Torrens grounder. Nimmo hits a single. Lindor hits a single to make it 6-1. Unfortunately, Jose Budo in his return to the mound would not look great as he allows back-to-back singles from Newman and d'Arnaud. Rengifo would bring in a run from a force out to make it 6-2, and then Taylor hits a double, which made it 6-3. Forced the Mets to get a little bit crazy with the bullpen. Raley had to use a lot of bullets. Diaz had to get a 4-out save, but it worked out in the end as the Mets complete the sweep. I'll let you give your thoughts on the series, but all I could say is, they did what they had to do, which was sweep the Angels. That's what you, again, should be doing against this bad team. But there is this part of me that's like, okay, this was still a very sloppy performance overall by the Mets. But overall, your thoughts in that regard?
No, listen, they, like you said, they did what they had to do. You're going against a pretty, I wouldn't say the Angels are terrible this year, but they're a mid team to be completely nice. And we know that the Mets are the more superior team. We know they're the better team all around. And the Mets went out there, they took care of business, and they swept the Angels. Now, look, was it the most prettiest series played? No, especially when you look at those first 2 games, where, they're down early in the first game. I mean, I'm pretty sure the deficit got to 5-1. They were down, and it looked like, they weren't going to get anywhere close to winning that game. Thankfully, they ended up, and for what it feels like the first time in this whole season, when a Mets starting pitcher actually has a bad outing, in which Senga had a bad outing, which we'll probably we'll talk about that more. But finally, this offense actually picked up one of their starting pitchers after they had a bad performance. So that was at least nice to see. Francisco Alvarez in his first game back, he had a pretty good game. I mean, he had the big double later in the game. I believe in the eighth inning, he had those 2 walks. So he had a pretty good first game coming back from the minor leagues. He added that on with a home run in the second game. But even again, the second game, again, they're down 2-0. Thankfully, though, I mean, the offense is able to wake up, get all those runs in 1 inning still. So that's something, you want to see this team work on a bit more and spreading out the offense a little bit more rather than just having, all the offense in 1 inning per se. And then the third game, which probably was the best game that they played overall. I mean, like you mentioned, Evan, their top guys finally started to get it going. Brandon Nimmo, he had a leadoff home run. Francisco Lindor with two RBI singles in the game. Nice to see him get a couple hits after getting his 0 for 31 streak snapped. So hopefully that's the monkey off his bat, and hopefully we start to see Lindor putting up MVP type numbers again. Obviously, Pete Alonso, who he was struggling a little bit, he had a very good game. Hitting that 3-run home run later in the game. And listen, for the pitching part in that third game, it was solid. I mean, we'll talk about. I'm pretty sure we'll talk about more a little bit about Sean Manaea and his inconsistency with his fastball velos, but overall he looked pretty solid. He gave that team 5 innings, and then overall the bullpen for the most part, other than Jose Budo, the bullpen was fine. Obviously, Edwin Diaz looked a little bit shaky. I mean, he ended up hitting Chris Taylor in the head with a fastball, which hopefully Chris Taylor's all right. I mean, he looks all right. He ended up walking it off under his own power, but still sucks to take that type of fastball to the head. But listen, it is what it is. Like you said, they did what they needed to do. They swept this Angels team, but they still need to clean up some stuff. And listen, now with we're 5 days away from the trade deadline. Six more games till the trade deadline, and it's two tough series, heading out to the West Coast, because you're battling two teams that are also battling for wild card spots in the San Francisco Giants and the San Diego Padres. So listen, this is gonna be a little bit of a tough stretch. We're gonna see where exactly this team is, but listen, it's a nice little test now, right before the All-Star break. So hopefully, they're able to come out on top.
Yeah, definitely nice to, salvage as well a lot of the garbage that we've seen from losing to, the Reds, for example, because, if you told me that they would take 2 out of 3 against the Reds, take 2 out of 3 against the Angels, I would have been happy with that, even though I think you should have swept realistically at least one of the series. So at least it evened out by the end of it a little bit, I guess, with the win total. But yeah, I think the biggest positive that you could take away though from the series is what you mentioned with Alvarez, and obviously he has to build on it because it is the Angels and it is 2 games, but I was really happy to see just the plate approach from him, because he was a lot more patient at the plate than we saw where he was just free swinging every time he was up there before he got sent back down. And then behind the plate too, I thought he was doing a really great job defensively, and they're even showing on the broadcast how much his stance changed. So I just hope he could build on it, because if he builds on this, that changes. And we talked about this leaving the game, the third game, where if he starts to show these improvements and starts to build on it, that changes this offense drastically, because this team is very top heavy right now. I don't think it's any secret, considering the results when the top guys don't show up, and considering when you look at just who's at the bottom of the order. If you could start to get the production from Beatty more consistently, specifically on the road, because I don't know what it is about him at home versus on the road, but he's hitting fine at home, just not on the road. And then if you could get the production from Alvarez and start to, formulate a little bit better production from the bottom of the order, and if they get Robert and hopefully hit on the upside, that changes things drastically going forward.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we talked about it leaving Citi Field after the Mets swept that series. But if this is the type of Francisco Alvarez this Mets team is going to get forward, and hopefully it is, it changes this lineup a lot. Now, look, do I still want them to go out and add a big time bat like a Suarez type? Yes, I absolutely do, because that makes the lineup deeper, and we want the deepest lineup possible going into the postseason. If they don't, I think Stearns is banking on the fact that Francisco Alvarez is going to have the type of impact bat that we saw come through the minor leagues, where he was just that huge power bat that would hit home runs, hit extra base hits, and would drive in a ton of RBIs. Because for the most part of the season, that's the one thing that the Mets have lacked so far. If you don't factor in the top guys, or the Fat Four, as Steve Cohen likes to talk about. This Mets team, specifically when you look at the bottom part of the lineup, they don't have that huge power bat, specifically in the more 6-7 hole of that lineup. Obviously, Beatty's chipped in with a couple home runs. Mauricio's chipped in with a couple home runs, but, they're not, consistent home run hitters. I think if you have Francisco Alvarez doing what he's at least showed through these first 2 games and what he showed through the minor leagues in that small stint that he had, I think that would be such a huge addition for the Mets to have, because again, this Mets team has lacked that big power bat in the bottom part of the lineup, and hopefully, like I was talking about, this is the Alvarez that we see continuing forward, and just can he please cancel out that fucking asshole Eric Chavez and don't listen to him about this bullshit of, put the ball on the ground, hit the ball to the opposite field, spread the ball out. No, do what you do best. Pull the ball, hit the ball hard, hit the ball for power, hit with power, hit home runs. It's funny how much better a player looks when he actually ends up playing to his strengths. I know it's a weird concept, and we see with a bunch of our teams, specifically the Rangers, how they don't put their players in the best position to exceed. But it's funny when you actually tell your players to play to their strengths, that they actually look like the type of players that we expected them to be. So hopefully for Alvarez, I mean, it is only 2 games they played, and like you mentioned, also his defense looked a lot more improved. I mean, I'm pretty sure he did end up throwing a runner out at second base, I believe, in the second game that they ended up playing. So again, that's a better improvement. And the fact that he looked a lot more comfortable blocking balls, and specifically, in his first 2 starts where he had to catch Senga, who, has that forkball, and he does, like to throw a lot of pitches in the dirt. And then again with Montas, who again has that splitter, and he throws a lot of pitches in the dirt as well to try to get swings and misses. So the fact that, he looked very comfortable blocking balls behind the plate as well, that looks good as well. But hopefully, like I talked about, this is the Francisco Alvarez that we start to see going forward.
Yeah, which, I mean, we've talked about ad nauseum, the whole, like, it's stupid that they don't let Alvarez do what he was brought in for, which is just mash home runs. So hopefully that's something that's going to change now from him. And then, like you said, in terms of other things to talk about from the series, is once again, not getting volume from starting pitching is too much of a theme. Montas at least gave you a good outing. I thought that, he settled in nicely. It sucks that he had that one rough inning, because it really could have pushed him to go and finish that last inning, which I would have personally been fine if they gave him. I think it was Rengifo coming up at that point. I would have been fine if they gave him Rengifo, even though he had a multi-hit game. But I understand at the same time not wanting to take that chance. So I'm not going to kill Mendoza for that. But, it is a problem, which is why they have to go out and acquire a starter that could eat innings. But it's just Senga, you need to get the volume from, and you didn't get it. Credit to the bullpen that day, though, especially Kevin Herget for giving those 2 innings. And then, Sean Manaea is really an interesting thing to monitor, because Senga, I feel like, at least, that was a rough outing. You're probably going to get him to bounce back. I don't know what volume you're going to get from him, but you'll get him to bounce back. Sean Manaea, though, is very interesting, because I talked about it on the post game. We talked about it at the stadium. His velo is just all over the damn map, and he's sometimes dialing it up to 94, and then other times he is not able to even touch 90 with the fastball. He's not throwing his sinker, which is also a little worrisome to me. Again, like I said in the post game, and I think you'll probably share the same thoughts as me, because we talked about it leaving the stadium. If this is a case of he's trying to dial it back so he could stay healthy, and then come October, he'll dial up the velo since his arm will be a little bit more fresh, and then, he'll be able to just empty the tank at that point. Okay, I could live with that as long as you're getting through the outings. But, if that's not the case, I have something that I'm a little worried about here then with Manaea, because I don't know how much he's going to get by with it. We'll see. But I don't know. I'm not concerned yet. It's just a little worrying to me, though.
Yeah, the inconsistency with the fastball velo for me, it is a little weird with Manaea, because I mean we were sitting there, we were watching that game, and it was weird, because there was sometimes where he was throwing 88-mile-an-hour fastballs, and then there was sometimes he was throwing 93-mile-an-hour fastballs, and then 90-mile-an-hour fastballs, and it was like it was weird to watch, because and I even thought about this, and again I checked, like, because his first outing this year, when he piggybacked off Clay Holmes in that Royal start, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I didn't remember him having, these weird fluctuations with his fastball velo in that game. And I ended up checking. I'm like, yeah, when you compare the average of the fastball velos, because in that KC game where he came out of the bullpen, he maxed out at 94.4 in his fastball velo, and he averaged 93 miles an hour on the fastball. But then when you compare it to the Angels start, maxed out at 93.8 miles an hour. So again, around that 94 mile an hour mark. But then he averaged only about 90.4 mile an hour on that fastball. So it's weird that in his first start there was no really huge drop off with the velo, but then specifically in the second game against the Reds, and then in this game against the Angels, you start to see that change in the fastball velo a little bit. I don't know if that's more because he came out of the bullpen, so maybe he felt like he could utilize his arsenal a little bit different, and he could end up throwing that fastball a bit more harder consistently compared to when he's starting a game, and he kind of has to change up his style a little bit, and he has to utilize different type of pitches. But then even though with the pitch types like you mentioned, like he hasn't thrown his sinker that much, he hasn't thrown his changeup that much. I mean, in his last start, he only threw one changeup compared to
He hasn't thrown the
43.
sinker at all.
Yeah. Yeah, he hasn't thrown the sinker at all. And I mean, when you compare that to 43 fastballs and then 21 sweepers, so it is weird. Obviously, we don't. I mean, obviously, we're hoping not for the worst case scenario to where he has to go into the knife and get Tommy John surgery, which that would be the worst case scenario. I mean, we did see before he came back, he had that loose body thing in his elbow, and I think, look, if he hopefully he could pitch through it throughout this whole season, and then if he has to get surgery, I think that would be the best case scenario instead of Tommy John, because then he'll end up probably missing sometime next year, but it's not going to be a year and a half like if you would have to get Tommy John surgery. So it's weird. Hopefully it's like what you talked about, where he's kind of just like dialing it up, and he's hoping to conserve himself for the postseason, but it is definitely a little weird that we didn't see the fastball consistencies in the first game, but then these last two games, that's when we start to see it pop up. So hopefully it's nothing, but I guess we'll see going forward.
Yeah, like I'll be more worried if this is what's going to happen. One, come October, and two, if he starts to get beat up in these outings and the velo is still low. Like that's when I'll have concerns. But if this is a case where he's just trying to get through outings and get volume and feel fine after outings, then I could at least live with that. But yeah, I mean, with that being said, I'm not sure if there's really anything else to talk about with the series other than, hopefully, like we talked about with Pete and Lindor, they build off of what they did uh, in that last game of the series. But at the same time, they beat the Angels, which you should be doing anyway. They definitely benefited off a lot of sloppy defense from the
Yeah.
Angels as well. So, like you said, a huge test coming up because these are teams that are actual contenders that are fighting for their playoff lives potentially. That you're going to have to go in on the West Coast and beat them. And this team has not been as good on the road late at all this season. So, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add about the Angels series before we segue into talking about what's coming up. But yeah, just again, they did what they had to do.
I mean, the only thing I'll probably briefly touch upon is because I didn't mention him, but again, I think Montas looked pretty good in the start as well. I mean, he kind of did get helped out a little bit with the defense in the first inning, just because he was kind of letting up a lot of hard contact in those first two innings specifically. I mean, he got that huge help from Soto, throwing out, I believe it was Schweinel at home plate. So good throw by Soto. He got bailed out. He gave up a hard line drive, and Pete ended up catching it for an out, but. Yeah, other than that first two innings, I thought Frankie Montas looked well again. His control solid. I mean, other than that, Bats hanging slider that he threw to Jorge Soler, like I said, for the most part, his control was fine. And again, I liked his velo. 96.1 on the fastball. He topped out at. So yeah, I think again another solid start from Montas.
Yeah, 100%. And then hopefully he could maybe give 6 innings the next time. Just not have as rough of a inning there, but we will see. With that being said, in terms of what's coming up, just because we're gonna keep this episode a little shorter since we're gonna be doing a live stream, like I said, right after this with Mets Weekly to talk more about the Gregory Soto trade. So be on the lookout for that. In terms of the pitching matchups against the Giants, since that series will start tonight at 10 o'clock. Game one, you got Logan Webb, the Giants. I mean, you could argue the ace of the staff, maybe. I don't know if you want to say him or Ray, but either way, Logan Webb is 9-7 on the year with a 3.08 ERA and a 1.21 WHIP. Clay Holmes will pitch for the Mets tonight, who is 8-5 on the year, 3.48 ERA, a 1.27 WHIP. Hopefully, we could see Clay Holmes give a little bit of volume because that has not been a thing lately with him. So hopefully, you could get more than 5 innings from him for once. Game two, Robbie Ray versus David Peterson. Robbie Ray is 9-4 on the year with a 2.92 ERA, 1.13 WHIP, having a resurgence versus David Peterson, who has been the guy to give volume consistently for this pitching staff. 6-4 on the year, 2.90 ERA and a 1.22 WHIP. And then game three, the Giants have not announced a starting pitcher thus far rather. And Kodai Senga will go for the Mets, who is 7-3, a 1.79 ERA and a 1.18 WHIP. Hopefully, could bounce back from the rough start he just had. You gotta win the series. Like, it's just that simple. I know that the Giants are throwing out some quality pitchers in Logan Webb and Robbie Ray, but if you are proving that you are a good baseball team, you still have to win these series. Like, there are no excuses. I don't want to hear that they're going against Logan Webb, they're going against Robbie Ray. It's not easy for this offense to hit good pitching. I don't want to hear any of that. Go in there and win 2 out of 3. I think you got to win the third game with Senga on the mound, and he needs to bounce back. And then I will say that they win game number 2. David Peterson, like I said, has been very consistent for this team. Going against Robbie Ray scares me for this team facing a lefty, but maybe you could beat up on that Giants bullpen a little bit, which does have some good names, though, with guys like Randy Rodriguez back there. But go win 2 out of 3. If you sweep, great, but I'm expecting 2 out of 3.
Yeah, I mean, same type of message I have. You got to at least go. You got to at least go in there and win this series. And listen, I know, like you brought up, they have their best 2 starters going, but at the end of the day, if you want to show that you're a World Series contender and you want to show that you're one of the best teams in baseball, you have to beat up on these good pitchers. Listen, Logan Webb's a very good pitcher, and Robbie Ray's a very good pitcher. But you have to go in there and at least take 2 out of 3. I do agree with you. I think they dropped the first game. I don't think it's more so that Clay Holmes is a bad start. I just think, Logan Webb ends up outdueling him just because, Logan Webb is the better pitcher between him and Clay Holmes. But yeah, I mean, like you said with Holmes, hopefully he gives you some length. I'm hoping for at least 6 innings tonight. But then that second game, you have Peterson, who's shown that, he's been arguably one of the most valuable pitchers on this Mets staff this year. So yeah, I do think they win that second game. And then with the third game, I do think Senga ends up bouncing back from his poor start against the Angels. And yeah, like I said, I think you have to win those last two games of this 3-game set. But listen, the Mets do have they do have their best 3 pitchers on the mound for this series. So listen, maybe the Mets do end up sweeping the series. I mean, if they do, great. But like I said, at least go out there and win 2 out of 3.
Yeah. You got to just win these series. Like, that's the most important between this and the series that is coming up against the Padres as well. You got to win these series to create some separation, and now you got the division lead back too. I would like to hold on to that as much as possible going forward, and winning series is the best way to do that. It's just that simple. But do you have anything else you want to discuss before we wrap up the episode here?
No, I mean, I certainly don't miss these West Coast late game starts. I mean, 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock. It's just I think these are the last West Coast games that they're going to play this year. Hopefully, so at least we're going to have to do that a couple more times. But listen, tough West Coast road trip. Ideally, and I know we're going to talk about the Padres series next podcast. But look, ideally for me, go forward to in this road trip. Go 4-2, win 2 series, go into the trade deadline on a bit of a high, and then make these trades, and then we start the what's it called, the trip to the trip to the postseason, and then we'll see what happens from there.
I know that it's for the series coming up after, but I really wonder if there's a certain someone in that next series coming up that's going to be walking across to the other dugout
Maybe
during that series, which I'm hoping for. I would love for the Mets to get Dylan Cease. I don't care about his numbers, his base numbers on the year. Would freaking love for them to get Dylan Cease because the underlying stuff still looks good for him. So I don't care. But either way, we're going to wrap things up as we are going to go live directly after this to talk more about the Gregory Soto deal, talk more trade deadline stuff. So be on the lookout for that. Refresh your page at 2:30 and you will find our live stream, or you can go to Mets Weekly. Go support both channels. I think that's the best thing that you could possibly do for both of us. But
Yeah.
thank you everyone for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe. Turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live. And we'll see you guys in the next one.